This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, NJBIA recently held its annual public policy forum in Woodbridge, New Jersey, which brought together political, economic, and business leaders from throughout the state. Part of the big event included a panel discussion with New Jersey's legislative leaders, moderated by New Jersey 101.5 news anchor Eric Scott. We take you now to that conversation, which first focuses on results from NJBIA's 2022 Business Outlook Survey, showing some employers may look to end their businesses sooner than expected due to continuing pandemic challenges. Take a look.
The survey is honestly eye-opening to me personally, to see 6 out of 10 businesses that are really looking at whether we want to be in business anymore. So the legislature needs to listen. You know, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but we really do need to listen, work with each other, talk to each other, and find ways to compromise. Which, oh, by the way, in this crazy time that we're in, we don't have to fight all the time. In New Jersey, we normally don't. I think Tom and I and our colleagues in the Assembly, normally we find a way to get things done. It's too easy to keep fighting. We need to come together and find solutions.
Well, let's go to the budget chair and follow up on that. You know, budget hearings, certainly nothing new to you. There are people that'll want to talk. How much listening is really being done, especially now from the business community facing what could be new regulations?
So I think that, to be honest with you, as budget chair, one of my favorite things is the public hearings. I think that that's where you feel the pulse of where the state is moving. That's where you really get to hear the average person voice their opinion, not just lobbyists. I think that this year will be different, right? Where we obviously had a message that was delivered to us in November. I think that people are upset about a lot of different things. You know, I was fortunate enough that I had the opportunity to work on the tax incentive bill, which was, I think, crucial and is crucial to kind of providing businesses an opportunity to not only expand, but other businesses that want to look at the state. But I think when it comes to small business, I'm an ironbound girl. I can't survive, right, without our Ferry Street corridor, our small restaurants, our small bakeries. And we've been listening a lot, and I think that this coming year is going to have to be a change, right? Because there are going to be different regulations coming forth, but there's also going to be things that we need to be more critical of and really start paying attention. These small businesses are really the backbone of what makes the economy thrive. I choose to shop local a lot of times, right? I think a lot of us should do that. But I think it's more than that. I think that they're really struggling because the prices are increasing. Those that offer insurance, that keeps increasing. So when you have your regular expenses that are increasing, but you're kind of still making the same amount of sales, it becomes a tough business. And I think that we as a legislature really need to start paying more attention to some of these issues. And I think that this past November gave everyone a wake-up call and opportunity to say, maybe we should slow down on some of the bigger items and get back to some of the basics.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because the Speaker Coughlin said after the election, clearly the voters were sending a message. We have to figure out what that message is. Have you figured out what it is yet?
I think that there's a lot of different messages. I think that for one, it's an opportunity where some of the businesses are saying, you say that you've been listening to me, but you really haven't been listening to me. I think that there's things that we could do differently. There still are some small business loans out there. People that need help, I think, should be able to call for help in order to apply. I think that When we talk about any type of new regulation that's coming forth, I think we need to be careful on the number of employees. That's always one that everyone struggles with, right? What is a small business? What is a medium-sized business? And I think for different areas of the state, that has a different meaning. So I think that that's something else that's going to have to be paid attention to. But to be quite honest with you, I think that, you know, when you look at some of the numbers that are coming in, New Jersey's not doing terribly, but I think that we're missing the point in that we're looking at the big picture and not the small picture, because at the end of the day, the smaller businesses and the medium-sized businesses are the ones that really employ our local people. And I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to look at.
You're watching a panel with New Jersey's legislative leaders as part of NJBIA's recently held public policy forum in Woodbridge, New Jersey. As part of that conversation, the panel was asked if they thought Governor Murphy's pledge to not raise taxes in his second term would stick. Here's what they had to say.
I would hope that the pledge that the governor made will be kept, because the state is taxed too much. My platform, not my platform, but for years we've been advancing affordability in New Jersey. That's what Path to Progress was about. You know, working in a bipartisan effect just to find solutions. Look, I'm proud that starting with Chris Christie, we started to fix the pension system. We finally got to the full pension payment. That pension system was going bankrupt. So we got that on the right path. Then had a well-publicized fight with the teachers, but wound up coming with a health care plan that's saving billions of dollars, Eric. We did reverse auctions to save billions of dollars. My point is, there's a lot of money to save if we do things differently. And here's the problem with New Jersey, is we like it the way it is, even though it's too expensive the way it is. So it's looking at things and how you do them and doing them differently to make them better, but more affordable, just like businesses do. Businesses have to be able to adapt and make changes. I'd like to point out something I did in my home county years ago. We created a countywide ambulance service. By the way, the only one in the state of New Jersey, and I could rattle off a whole lot of other things we did in my county. We run half the ambulances, half. We have faster response times than anybody in the state of New Jersey. Got the best service, been recognized multiple times. And we're paying less for it. My point is, if you want a more affordable New Jersey, you have to look at things differently. I'm proud. We got 70 school districts, Eric, right now in New Jersey studying consolidation. Before Path to Progress, no one talked about consolidation. I see Ralph Thomas out there. He was my partner in this, working with us on this. Again, Chris Emmelholz was part of the team. This was not a Republican-Democrat effort. It's an effort we have to provide services at the highest level, but we don't have to pay the highest price for the services. So I think, Eric, we have to bottom up, top down, a real reflection of what we're doing in order to reduce the cost, because the bad news is we're too expensive. We're way too expensive. The good news is we can be cheaper. We just have to have the courage to go there. And I'm never going to stop, Eric. This is, like I said, you know, for the entire 12 years I was Senate President, I didn't run away from anyone. I got in some of the biggest fights with everyone. And the point is, you can get in big fights and survive when you're doing the right thing. So for me, I look at it as, like, even after I'm done here, we joke, I said, I'm not going away, unfortunately for most of you people, because I believe New Jersey is one of the greatest states, if not the greatest state in the nation. People love it here. There was an article today I read, the 50 most wonderful things about New Jersey, why you want to be here. We're here because we want to be here, not because we have to be here. We want to be able to stay here. And that's where the problem runs in. So without change, Eric, and me quoting Einstein is quite significant, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So what I'm saying is, I'm going to go forward, continuing to work on policies like Path to Progress, continuing to push from a different platform, but we cannot not move forward. We cannot be paralyzed and be afraid of change. I'm not saying change for the purpose just to say you're doing something. Change to make it better and more affordable. And guess what? The good news is it can be done. We've done some very powerful things in the legislature over the years, and which maybe people don't recognize, but taking the pension system from bankruptcy, which is where we were heading, to a full payment this year. Eric, there's a lot that we can do without raising taxes. We need to look within how to do things better.
Well, tax hikes have to start in the Assembly. They would have to go through the Budget Committee. And before we lose Chairwoman Pintor Marin to her business, let's talk to you about that first. Tax hikes in your committee. You going to hold the governor to it?
So Eric, I just want to know that you will have JBOC be late just to answer this question. But
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, gladly. I think that when obviously the governor made a commitment to everyone, right? It wasn't just a legislature, it was to everyone. I would think that he would hold that truth. And I think that as the legislature, I think we're going to help him hold that as being truthful. And I think he will. I think, as you said, right, we are flushed with cash right now. But you yourself discussed some of the issues that we do have, right? Some of these structural issues that for years, and you know, everyone keeps blaming it on each other. Years before even Murphy or even Christie was here, we've started to have these issues. The problem is that we get a little close to trying to fix it, and then something happens. I think it's a good opportunity and a good time for us to analyze and to look at whether we need to do some funding for the UI, which I think is going to have to happen. But I think it's also an opportunity to help the economy grow in the right way. And I think that by doing so is, you know, when we look at how we're funding our schools, and I know that Senate President Sweeney has looked at this for years, right, that there might be some property tax relief on that end that we've been discussing. I think that there are opportunities for us to be helpful. New Jersey has always been a high tax state. That is always the main issue. And when people, you know, talk about how much they pay, listen, at the end of the day, yes, I'm a legislator, but I'm a mom, I'm a homeowner, I have 2 kids, you know, a house, a mortgage, and when you look at the end of the month, how much you're able to put aside, it's not like it used to be. So I think that my issue is what every New Jersey constituent has. And I think that this coming year is a real opportunity for us to really look at some of the things that we can do to have some real cost savings. Maybe some people won't be happy to save $1,000 here or there, but I think $1,000 goes a long way when you're multiplying that by, you know, 5 or 10 years. So these are definitely issues that the Senate President has worked on, and I was part of that panel with you, Senate President. And I think that all of us here today, there's things that we can do, I believe, collectively, to really have some sort of savings moving forward.
Well, you had everybody's ears perk up when you mentioned UI relief. So we'll wait for more on that. And I know you have business to attend to.
Eric, on the UI, can I address that for a second?
Sure.
You know, Tom and I did a constitutional amendment back in 2009 that ended the rating of the unemployment fund. And New Jersey was in much stronger position than a lot of states. I'm looking at like John Rogers and others that we had that fight to get it done, because the unemployment fund was rated every year $400 million. And we ended that rate, so the UI fund is in a much better position. Look, a pandemic hit, and if we took every single dollar that we have and to offset the unemployment increases, it wouldn't be enough because so much has been borrowed. So the debate is, do you use the dollars to try to improve the economy? Do you use the dollars to fix the things that are broken in the state of New Jersey? Or like I said, you know, it's really, it's a tough position to be in at the end of the day, because there's not enough money, is what I'm telling you. If we put the $4 billion into it, how many billions are we in the hole right now? 28?
Well, I think that's the question, right? And Assemblywoman Munoz, we haven't really heard from you on the panel. And the question then becomes, what is the biggest bang for our buck? Would it be across-the-board tax cuts for businesses? Would it be tax cuts for individuals? Would it be some supplement to the UI fund? You know, you are in a position where you are more flush with cash than you've been in a long time. You can argue whether it was right or wrong to be in this position in the first place, but the fact is, here we are. So what is the biggest bang for the buck? Is it an across-the-board tax cut, or is it shoring up the UI?
Well, thank you, Eric, and I've always enjoyed listening to you on Ask the Governor, whichever governor that is. You know, we keep talking about the fact that we're flush with cash, but we have a structural deficit in our budget. So we have cash that is from last budget year. So that money comes from the CARES Act, and it has, you know, and others, and through our borrowing. So we need to, some of that money has to be used, you know, related to COVID relief. And part of, I would say, that the unemployment insurance fund was depleted because of COVID. So, you know, Assemblyman Hal Worths and I, and Senator Orho have a bill to put $2.5 billion of that money into the unemployment insurance fund, because that we could legitimately do that. Because it is, you could directly link it to COVID relief because it was depleted because of COVID relief. I think that because that was a tax that did go in effect on July 1st, the unemployment insurance tax went up for both pay the employees and the employers. And that was a big hit. So, you know, at a time when small businesses were really hurting. And what we've seen today is that small businesses are really hurting. So, you know, I think we have to be very careful about saying we're flush with cash. Because if you look at next year's budget, $46-point-something billion budget, but with $42 billion in money. So that's not flush with cash. So let's be careful how we address that issue. You know, I think that since we're talking about small businesses and the importance that they have for the state of New Jersey, we should follow through on that money. You know, there's so much to be done in the state. I was personally found the JP Morgan presentation a little bit depressing. I don't know about the rest of you. They were sort of being optimistic, but New Jersey was always there as the least affordable, the highest tax. There was nothing that was optimistic about that presentation, in my view. So all of us together as leaders, and with Eliana, Pintor, Marin, and myself on the Budget Committee, and with Senator Sweeney and Senator Kean, we have been working to try to make the budget better for across the state. So there's so many things we can do, but I think one thing we could do immediately is to put some of that CARES Act money toward the unemployment insurance fund to decrease that tax, the burden on the employers and the employees. But we certainly, you know, again, I keep writing notes down. What I keep writing down is the voters spoke, because we're all saying the same thing. What we heard in this election was we heard from the voters, and the voters want New Jersey to be more affordable. And that's what, you know, that's what we heard loud and clear. And so we have a budget process, and we do have money available. Again, we're not flush with cash. We have a structural deficit, but we have CARES money to be spent. So how do we effectively spend that? I still support putting a percentage of that money into the unemployment insurance fund. And that's where, you know, and doing other things that would help the small businesses and the property tax payers of the state. That's what I see in the future. I have a loud voice on the Budget Committee. You know, we are there, meaning Hal Worths is the budget officer, the ranking member on the Budget Committee, and our voices will be heard. And we will make sure, because as you heard from all of us today, the voters spoke at this election.
Then not let it be lost that we've given about $1 billion to small businesses during this period too. That, you know, that has to be on the score sheet too. Yeah. We've taken federal money to help small businesses survive in these tough times. People don't want to mention that. There's $1 billion there that I think it's $1 billion, or if not more, that we were doing to help small businesses.
All right, you've been watching coverage from NJBIA's Public Policy Forum. We'll be back right after this data point from NJBIA's Business Outlook Survey and a word from our sponsor.
Okay, at AT&T, everyone gets our best deals on all smartphones.
Let me break it down. You got your new customers.
They get our best deals.
You got your existing customers.
They also get our best deals. Everyone gets the deals.
Questions.
Got it. But why did you use a permanent marker?
Because I want to make sure you remember. I'm going to get a new whiteboard.
It's not complicated. Only AT&T gives everyone our best deals on every smartphone, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G for free.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. We continue now with more coverage from NJBIA's Public Policy Forum, where New Jersey's legislative leaders were asked if they would be able to blunt some of Governor Murphy's more progressive policies, with Senate President Steve Sweeney due to leave the legislature next month. Here's what Senator Sweeney and the others had to say.
I would certainly hope so, Eric, and I think my colleagues, I'm blessed to lead a caucus of very strong people. And I think we've all heard the message about affordability in this state. You know, in fact, the press was making jokes like, surprise, the number one issue 50 years later is property taxes, right? What a shock. But my point is, but people have to realize also, in order to make this place more affordable, we got to stop these antiquated systems of delivering services, that we have to move forward and come up with a new process. Yeah, I think New Jersey is not a progressive state. It is a moderate state. People overestimate all the time that it's a blue state. The reason why the Democrats were in the majority was because we were getting elected in the suburbs, including my district. We did redistricting 10 years ago. They said there were 17 safe Democrat districts in New Jersey. 17 is not 21, it's 17. And if Democrats want to maintain the majority, they're going to listen. We're going to get more moderate. We're going to work with our Republican colleagues, which we always have, just so you know. This state's unique, and I'm proud of the working relationships that we all have with each other and the respect we show. But Eric, the state needs to get back in the middle where there's 80% of the people. It's hard for both parties to ignore the fringes, but you're losing the battle if you don't do it. Look, the progressives cheered me losing to a supposed QAnon, anti-Islam, anti-this, anti-that person. But that's who I lost to. And they cheered it. Oh, by the way, I was the person that sponsored minimum wage, sick leave, paid family leave, on and on and on. And if you're happy about that, that tells you what's wrong with the Democrat Party. Most Democrats aren't there. And we're going to continue to talk to Democrats and bring us back in the middle, because I won't be there. Nellie will be. Nellie will be a strong voice. She always has been. You know what I mean? My colleagues on the Democrat side aren't afraid to get into a fight. Realize when I had disagreements with the governor, my caucus was there with me. I wasn't on my own. It's not a one-man band. I get whether the credit or the blame for doing good or bad, but I can't do anything without the caucus. You know what I mean?
If I could just make a comment, Eric, about that.
Yeah.
I think that some people in my caucus misinterpreted the results of this election, and I agree with Senator Sweeney. We, as a state, didn't move farther to the right. We had simply moved too far to the left. And I think that we're trying to move back to that center. And I think that we need to make sure that that message is out there, because we had gone so far to the left that's why people reacted. So it's, I think that as Governor King would say, we're 80% of us are in the center. As Senator Sweeney just said, 80% of us are either center left or center right. So again, we were moving so far left that the reaction was to move back toward that center.
And the legislature, the people across the state said, we want affordability, we want transparency, we want to make sure that it's clear and consistent and predictable actions out of all levels of government, from top to bottom. And they haven't seen that in Trenton for the last 4 years, and some would say. But what they wanted to focus on was this. Number one, the tax code is completely unpredictable. The regulatory environment is going up, and the executive branch took more and more power over the course of the last couple of years, and it hasn't. And I think the legislature and the executive branch need to work together to make sure that there's the appropriate levels of oversight, that we have the right levels of accountability. Because right now, people are saying the state's unaffordable. When you're talking about whether it's the ability to hire people, whether to stay in New Jersey, whether to have 3 generations of New Jerseyans be able to stay here and help each other, and that's where we are as a state, is that neighbor helping neighbor, family helping family, and everybody being a very short commute away. Way too frequently, because of the tax problems, the regulatory problems, people are now plane rides away. And plane rides away impact everybody's life and livelihoods. And there are things we need to do that we need to focus to make sure we've got a predictable tax code, which should be a lot lower than it currently is in every bracket. But we also need to make sure that we have a child deduction, which is something that I've been trying to work on for a number of years now, which Steve has been an extraordinary partner in. We've gotten through the state Senate now twice. My hope is we can get through the General Assembly in this lame duck session. Because you're talking about the small businesses, and we need to focus on things like child care, and we need to focus on an educational funding formula. We need to make sure that schools open and predictable, and you've got daycare. But there's so many nonprofits that are now also fighting to survive. And we're one of the few states that has an income tax that does not have a child deduction associated with it. And it's the one chain reform you can have that would not only make sure that neighbor can continue to help their neighbor, but you'd also make the state far more affordable for people. And you'd have, whether that nonprofit is related to the health issues, environmental issues, many other social services, education related. I mean, those are the things that really ties together societies, the small businesses, the nonprofits, the large corporations, the families, the institutions of faith, that really bind us together as New Jerseyans, generation after generation. And if you're able to have something like that, and you get to your core point is, having a charitable deduction in the tax code will not be taken away. And that's one of the most important things we can also make sure is that predictably over time.
Well, and I guess I think the last thing, that I want to come back to again is the predictability, the eliminating so many of the, unknowns, or as many as you can, but at least knowing that the business community is going to be able to have a set of rules under which they can operate under. We can all argue, again, whether those rules are good or bad or indifferent. Mm-hmm. But do you have, each of you sitting up here, do you have any confidence going into this new year that at least there will be a set of rules and you will eliminate some of that unpredictability?
I think it's up to the people who are in this room and throughout the state to make sure that their voices are heard. You need to be engaged in a way that you've not been engaged in the past. And whether it's with new senators, or whether it's in the Assembly, or whether it's on your local elected officials, or with the executive branch, your voices need to be heard morning, noon, and night. An active and engaged citizenry is the best way to make sure we've got a transparent government at all levels. And that type of predictability ensues. So it's up to you to continue to be involved and be far more aggressive in making sure that your voice is heard.
All right, a lot of very insightful takes from New Jersey's legislative leaders as part of NJBIA's Public Policy Forum. We thank the panelists for taking part, and big thanks to NJBIA's Government Affairs and Events team for putting the entire conference together. And we thank you all for joining us on NJBIA's Mind Your Business. We'll see you next time.